Hey, Dad.
Yes, son?
Look, I just put some of Stacy's fingernail polish on.
You did what?
I put some of her fingernail polish on. Isn't that funny?
No, it's not. It's beautiful. You know, I've kind of figured ever since you played with that Barbie doll that one day, that this was how it would be.
What?
You were born in the wrong body, and I never even saw it.
Can I go play with Lucas now, Dad?
No, not right now. We got something far more important to do. We're gonna put you on hormone blockers and chemically castrate you.
It's funny because it's true. And, you know, he might be sterilized, but he's going to be a trendy child that the multinational corporations are going to love taking money from. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name's Zukradowski here. We are change.org, and there is some absolutely wild and crazy news to get into today, as of course we have a lot of domestic news with a surprising story coming out of Washington, D.C. All of this as there are some major shocking developments internationally, specifically happening in Ukraine, that we're going to be talking about with a larger geopolitical perspective in this particular video, as it looks like things are heating up and the president of Russia might be ousted. Is that propaganda? Is that true? Well, we're going to be talking about that plus a lot more all here on this independent media broadcast. If you like the shirt that I'm wearing, you can get it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com, and the clip that we played in the beginning of this broadcast is done by, I have no idea who this creator is. It was originally posted on Catch Up. It looks like it's a TikTok user, Them Woke Bloke. Looks like it is that content creator that made this that other people are curating out there. If you know who this person is, please let me know. We would like to attribute them down in the description below so you guys could go follow more of this very hilarious, funny, satirical, comedic work that we definitely need more of in our ever so deteriorating societal collapse that we are all going through right now. Societal collapses that are filled with, of course, a lot of psyopses and governments engineering, financing, and creating spectacular orchestrated events that prop up the problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic. As today we are finding out that the suspect that allegedly represents white identitarian racial political ideology and tried to allegedly take out the president of the United States just had all of his major charges dropped. Yes, you are hearing this correctly. This alleged white identitarian just had nearly all of his original charges dropped by Washington, D.C. prosecutors in what could only be a case of some severe white privilege. You gotta be freaking kidding me. Again, we were hearing about this story like crazy all last week. We talked about it a little bit. All the major left-wing corporate media commentators were salivating on this story until they found out the person behind it and how he looked and his actual skin color. As this young 19-year-old man from Chesterfield, Missouri was facing some very serious charges, accusations, where he was charged and arrested to threaten to take out, kidnap, and inflict harm on the President of the United States. He was facing additional charges for using a U-Haul vehicle that was, quote, reckless operation of a motor vehicle, assault with a dangerous weapon, trespassing, and destruction of federal property. We were hearing about in the corporate media how he was planning this attack for 6 months, and now he had all of those charges dropped and downgraded to one charge that he's facing right now of, get this, depredation of property. Yes, you heard this correctly. He is now only facing one charge from D.C. prosecutors that have dropped nearly all the charges against him. Now, what information led to this huge reversal, to this story being kind of ignored by the corporate media that originally was loving to talk about it? What was happening behind the scenes that we still have no idea about? Well, that's a question worth asking, as it's important to note here that the federal authorities have a long history of working with mentally deranged individuals and pushing them to do really horrible things, all paid for by your tax dollars, which the U.S. government is demanding more of, as of course they spend too much of your money that they can't account for. Trillions of dollars missing in secret Pentagon black budgets, multiple audits failed, No audits done on the U.S. Federal Reserve that literally hands out money to all the major corporations, and then they later stiff you with the bill or record high inflation that the American people are dealing with right now that is absolutely eviscerating and destroying any kind of wealth or prosperity that they thought they might have. Where else is your money going to? Well, it's going towards prolonging an international proxy conflict between the East and the West, which is absolutely getting out of hand. We're going to be talking about that in just a little bit, as U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham just told the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that the American people giving money to prolong this conflict, this bloodbath, this sacrificing of life is, quote, the best money we ever spent. This as your politicians are bragging about spending your money on the military-industrial complex that has over-bloated budgets and, in many instances, has been caught price gouging the American people, overcharging them extensively to only enrich themselves and screw everyone else over. This is where your tax dollars are going to. This is where your government spending is going to. This as the U.S. government is facing a debt ceiling bill that, of course, is now facing more and more opposition. As in yesterday's video, we talked about how there was a preliminary agreement between the congressional minority leader. Today, we're hearing more opposition to this, specifically from the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, saying that the United States will still be careening towards bankruptcy, even if there's a deal made here, as of course the U.S. government spends too much money that they don't have. Increasing the debt limit to $4 trillion is proof that we're being ruled by a bunch of unaccountable oligarchs that are just as money hungry as they are bloodthirsty to worship and celebrate the satanic entities and demons that have taken over their bodies. And according to my own personal opinion, I'm going a little bit out there, which I usually do for LukeUnfiltered.com, our own website where I get to rant about the demons, the spiritual entities, and the larger energetic warfare that's happening in our mainline society. I can only go there on my own platform, on my own website. You want to hear those rants? You want to hear those conversations? You want to be a part of them? Sign up to LukeUnfiltered.com right now. As of course, today we're going to have some very interesting topics to talk about that we cannot talk about here on this particular broadcast, especially when it comes to the story of the decade, that there's some very interesting developments around, especially when it comes to the close associates of this man that have now been exposed. Chris Rock, David Blaine, Peter Thiel, what do they all have in common? Well, we're going to be talking about that, plus a lot more, all in an exclusive broadcast only available for members on LukeUnfiltered.com. You get a lot of other perks by being a member, and we are going to have a lot of really cool things available for people, like even individual cards that you could download, print out yourself, or have them made on any kind of website that you could take and specifically go to a restaurant and make sure that your food doesn't have any seed oils on it. We're also making a crap list for the grocery store that literally will detail all the ingredients you should be looking out for and avoiding. Again, I haven't seen a lot of people do this type of stuff, but we're trying to implement tactical tools and resources to enable you to be the strongest, healthiest, best version of yourself. We do that specifically with a crap ton of amazing members on LukeUnfiltered.com. A lot of great resources coming your way if you're a member, including also, of course, merchandise that you could get at cost, saving you a bunch of money, all on LukeUnfiltered.com. And I will see you there right after this broadcast, as of course, tensions geopolitically are at an all-time high, especially with the latest clashes that just happened between Kosovo and Serbia, as protests there have left a lot of military personnel and police officers injured there. And as tensions are heating up, the Serbian military just decided to send a convoy towards Kosovo. The NATO Secretary General just announced 700 more troops to be sent to Kosovo in order to deal with the rising tensions in that particular region. As of course, that's not the only region dealing with a lot of explosive developments and details that are very dangerous to the local population. As of course, today we're also finding out how Ukraine has been launching more attacks directly against the capital of Russia, Moscow, sending drones, striking the capital and other strategic locations inside of that country, drastically escalating tensions, doing so using drone attacks that are aimed at civilian sites, which the Russian Foreign Ministry is warning will have some, quote, severe measures in response to this assault. As we're also learning that one of these kamikaze drones was, quote, in an earshot of Putin's palace, as many media publications are describing this as the worst attack on Moscow since World War II, making the people realize that in Russia, the war is getting a lot realer for the local population there, as we're hearing today that there was dozens of kamikaze drones that appeared to be targets of wealthy suburbs of Moscow, as explosions rung out all throughout Russia, one of which, of course, hitting a civilian compound. Some of the drones were shut down, some of them weren't, but with this escalation, you could definitely expect Russia to retaliate in some kind of way, as they are describing today's events as terrorism. This, as of course, Russia has been bombing key strategic infrastructure targets of Ukraine throughout the last few months. All the while, Ukraine also just launched a military operation inside of Russia, which will directly put a lot of political pressure on the current president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. This, as the Ukrainians have also been using a lot of unorthodox tactics, like going after high-profile personalities, journalists, and media figures in Russia and taking them out and taking their lives in brutal sabotage attacks, attacking key media personalities, escalating the tensions, and fighting an unorthodox kind of warfare. This, as the United States is coming out and saying specifically that it does not back Ukraine with its attacks against Russia inside of their particular territory. All of this, as there have been multiple public releases and statements made from the United States, specifically telling Ukraine not to attack and to, of course, go into Russian territory, which they have routinely not listened to. Now, it's also important to note here that a lot of the assassinations that were carried out by the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces go right out of the code book of the CIA. And even though the United States is saying this publicly, I think it's fair to say that someone is lying here. And if it's the Ukrainians, I highly doubt that they would be willing to piss off the country that is arming them the most and giving them the majority of the military equipment that they're using right now. And if the United States had a wish here, the Ukrainians probably would be abiding by those wishes. The fact that they're not highlights how the United States and probably other covert measures are involved here, fighting an unconventional war, which I think it's important to realize here has a lot of severe ramifications that we, of course, should be talking about and having a national discussion on, but we don't. This, as another prominent Russian figure that the Ukrainians are trying to take out, is, of course, the chief of the Wagner private mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, that, of course, has been a major target for the Ukrainians, as he has had a lot of successful military victories in this theater of war. As Prigozhin is known for saying some spicy things to the national media, he also sends out a lot of disinformation through a lot of the comments that he also makes here, which is important to note here when looking at any of his direct comments here, as he is directly calling out, quote, Putin's minions over these latest drone attacks, which he says has humiliated the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, that has admitted that his air defense was, quote, shabby. Prigozhin went on and said a bunch of expletives directly at what is being described here as Putin's cronies. All of this, as according to Business Insider and according to their sources, a Russian commander, that this situation is creating a scenario where Prigozhin might take over the position of power from Vladimir Putin. And if that does happen, we could expect more of a war hawk to be in the seat of power in Russia, which of course would gravely escalate the current situation in that region and endanger the entire world. I truly do believe we are at a situation where the escalations are dangerous for everyone involved here, including all the people of the world here, and we're reaching a crescendo moment where you could only escalate so much without everything just spilling over all over the place. If you look at history, if you look at a lot of the other global conflicts that were kind of created there, it was always a kind of slow progression towards larger spillover. And I think right now we're reaching this kind of crescendo moment, as of course there's a lot of disinformation, there's a lot of propaganda, but we're seeing escalation after escalation after escalation, and we're seeing no de-escalation. We're seeing the United States keep arming Ukraine to the point of not military victory, but towards the prolongment of this conflict. And the longer it goes on, the longer the population of the world is endangered by it. That's my point of view. That's my opinion. If you disagree, let me know why down in the comment section below. But to me, this message, this conversation is important. And if you agree with that, Share this video with your friends and family members. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys actively watching, supporting, debating, having conversations with me. And I think it's fair to say this war has gone on for far too long, and I think we should be using all resources available trying to de-escalate it and stop it. That's my perspective. What do you think? I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. That's why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org. One more video coming your way on lukeunfiltered.com. See you there.